All right, let's talk about something that probably gives you a bit of a headache in the IELTS reading test. Those diagram and table questions. But what if I told you they're not a threat at all? In fact, they're a huge opportunity. We're going to break down the logic behind them so you can turn what feels like a challenge into some of the easiest points you'll get. You know that feeling, right? You flip the page and bam, there's this complicated looking diagram or a big table with a bunch of empty boxes. If your heart sinks a little, trust me, you are not alone. For a lot of people, that's a moment of pure panic. But here's the thing, that panic is based on a total misunderstanding of what these questions are even asking. So let's just bust a huge myth right now. So many people think these questions are designed to be tricky, that you need to be creative or read between the lines. The reality? They're only testing your visual logic. It has nothing to do with imagination. It's just a simple, controlled reading task where every single thing you need is sitting right there in the text. Okay, so if they're that simple, why do they feel like such a trap? Well, it's because they are built to test one very specific skill. And if you don't know what that skill is, it is incredibly easy to get tangled up and lose your way. So what is this visual logic thing anyway? Honestly, think of yourself as a detective. The diagram or the table, that's your map. The reading passage, that's where all the clues are hidden. Your only job is to match the clues from the text to the right spot on the map. You're not inventing anything. You're just matching. Now, to beat that trap and get really good at that matching skill, you need a set of rules. And these aren't just tips, okay? These are unbreakable, fundamental principles that make all the difference between a low score and a high score on these questions. The source material I'm drawing from puts this perfectly. You need to tattoo these mentally. I mean, wow, that's how important they are. They are completely non-negotiable. So let's get into them. Rule number one, and listen up, because this is the big one. Your personal knowledge is worth 0 points here. You could be a world-class expert on whatever the diagram is about, and it wouldn't matter. The answer, the exact words must be found in the passage. The diagram is your guide, but the text is the treasure. Okay, rule number two. The word limit is a law. It is not a friendly suggestion. If the instructions say no more than 2 words and you write 3, you are wrong, period. It doesn't matter if your idea is right. IELTS is not flexible on this. One little extra A or the can cost you the entire point. And finally, rule number 3. This is where simple carelessness gets you. One wrong letter, forgetting to make a word plural with an S, or picking a word that just doesn't fit the grammar of the sentence. Any of those little slip-ups will get you a 0 for that question. You have to be precise. So let's just nail this down one more time. The golden rules: all your answers are hiding in the passage, word limits are absolute, and your spelling and grammar have got to be perfect. If you can get these in your head, you're already halfway there. Rules are awesome, but you need a process, right? A game plan. So let's build on those rules with a practical step-by-step method you can just run on autopilot every time you see one of these questions. We're going to start with diagram completion questions. You know the ones I'm talking about. They usually show a process, like how a machine works or some kind of natural cycle, with little labels pointing to different parts. Here is your 5-step playbook. First, and this is so important, study the diagram before you even touch the passage. Get a feel for what it's showing. Second, immediately check the instructions for that word limit. Third, look at a blank and predict the kind of word you're looking for. Is it a material, a name, an action? This helps you focus. Fourth, use keywords from the diagram to scan the passage. And remember, the answers in the text will almost always be in the same order as the questions. And finally, step 5, when you find the answer, just lift the exact words. Don't rephrase them, copy and paste them with your pen. All right, so that's diagrams. Now let's talk about their close cousin, the table completion. The main idea is exactly the same, but the layout's different, so we just need to tweak our approach a little. For tables, the headings are your absolute best friend. So step 1, read the column and row headings to see how everything's organized. Step 2, figure out which column actually has the blanks you need to fill. Ignore the rest for now. Step 3, use the info in the rows as your keywords to scan the passage. And fourth, always do a quick logic check at the end. Does your answer actually make sense in that column? You're not going to put a person's name in a column labeled year, right? Now, knowing the method is one thing, but knowing how the test is actively trying to trick you, well, that's what takes you to the next level. Let's look at the common traps so you can see them coming a mile away and just step right over them. The number one trap, by far, is visual distraction. People get so mesmerized or freaked out by the complicated drawing that they completely forget the first golden rule. They start trying to guess from the picture instead of using it like a map that just points them to the right sentence in the text. Okay, trap number 2 is super sneaky. Sometimes a diagram already has a few parts labeled for you. A student who's panicking might just see one of those labels and copy it into a blank space nearby. But nope. If the passage doesn't explicitly link that word to that specific blank, it is a trap. And trap 3 brings us right back to our golden rules. You find the right info, you totally understand the answer, but then you write it down with too many words. You write a steel component, which is 3 words. If the limit is 2 words, you have to find how the passage says it more simply, like steel component. So you see what's happening here? When you combine the rules, the method, and an awareness of the traps, you make this huge mental shift. This is how you go from seeing a diagram and panicking to seeing a diagram and thinking, oh, awesome, here come the free marks. And this table shows the huge difference in approach. A low band student sees the visual, freaks out, and just starts guessing from the picture. But a high band student, they ignore the panic, they stay mechanical, and they just trust the process. The result is a quiet but really significant score boost from questions that most other people are getting wrong. And what about speed? You might think this process sounds slow, but it's the opposite. Because it's so mechanical, it's actually really fast. Once you practice this, you should be aiming for about 45 seconds per blank. That means these questions can actually save you time that you can use on the tougher parts of the test. So, the big takeaway is this. Diagram and table questions are not scary. I love how one source put it. They are organized information wearing a costume. Your job is just to ignore the silly costume, see the simple structure underneath, and pull the answers right out. By trusting this process, following the rules, and just ignoring all the visual noise, you can totally transform your approach. So the only real question left is, are you ready to stop being afraid of these things and start seeing them for what they really are? Free marks?